Hello, we are Group Americas 3, and today we will be discussing the Hopewell culture and tribe. My name is Matthew Dickman.
I am Brian Carretero.
Angus.
I'm Caroline Clausen.
This is Matthew Dickman again, and I'll be talking to you first about the Hopewell tribe lifestyle to get a little bit more of a background on the Hopewells themselves. The Hopewells were just a standard Native American tribe. They lived in the plains of the United States, and they had an extensive trade network that stretched across most of the eastern United States. Just like many Native Americans of their time, they used knives and spears that they created from the resources around them and the resources from their environment to hunt and gather across the Great Plains. They participated in many activities in order to survive and last as long as they did. They participated in hunting buffalo and bison. They fished in the rivers. They also gathered berries and fruits, and they also were so advanced they began to farm.
I am Brian Carretero, and I'll be talking about the Hopewell history. The Hopewell culture doesn't refer to a particular Native American tribe. Instead, it is a name for a distinctive set of artifacts, earthworks, and burial practices. The Hopewell culture flourished from about 200 BCE to 500 CE. And it is believed that with fewer people using trade routes, there was no longer a network linking people to the Hopewell traditions. So around 500 CE, the Hopewell exchange ceased, mound building stopped, and art forms were no longer produced. A possibility for this is believed to be war, as villages dating to the late woodland period, which came right after the Hopewell period, shifted to larger communities. They built this defensive fortifications, making trading harder for the Hopewell culture.
This is Angus Denver. I'm going to talk about the geography of the Hopewell people. So the Hopewell people lived in and around the state of Ohio mostly. However, they had related tribes in other states around that northeastern area of the United States. So, for example, they had related tribes in Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and just some other states in the Midwest. So the Hopewell culture was named after the Hopewell farm in Ross County in Ohio. And the reason for this is just because like the majority of the Hopewell people lived around that area in Ross County, and there were some artifacts found on the farm. So kind of the other things in the area, there are maize, beans, squash, nuts, fruits, seeds, and roots. So these are the kinds of things they would be eating because those are very prevalent in the area.
This is Caroline Clausen, and I will be talking to y'all about just an overview of the Hopewell artwork. So the Hopewells created some of the finest craft work and artwork in the Americas at this time, and most, if not all, of their artwork had some religious significance. They created much more variety and made use of much more exotic materials than their predecessors, the Adena tribe. Some of the religious significances came with their burials as well. Their graves were filled with necklaces, ornate carvings, decorated ceremonial pots, earplugs, and pendants. And then the excavation of the mound of pipes found more than 200 stone smoking pipes that depicted animals and birds in their 3D form.
So this is Angus Denver, and I'm going to talk about the Ray figurine. So this figurine is a depiction of a shaman. So a shaman was a religious figure and healer in the Hopewell community. So in this figurine, the shaman is wearing a bear costume. And the shaman's hand is reaching into the bear mask as if he or she were in the process of putting it on or taking it off. So by putting on the bear costume, the shaman would assume the spirit of the bear. So pretty much this is showing this man or woman becoming one with the bear. So the Ray figurine is also called the Hopewell Shaman of Newark. just because of the area it was found in. And it is not known exactly in which years the Ray figurine was made. It's just known that it was a Hopewell figure. So a shaman, I'm going to speak a little bit about his or her roles. So a shaman would often help out with hunting or farming. So, for example, the shaman was essential in bringing the rain for the crops and for attracting the game, such as the deer. So he was essential in the eyes of the Hopewell people, the shaman was essential in feeding the community. And it's also important to note that it's unknown if this was a man or a woman. So this does leave a lot of gray area for who the shamans were. But it does show that bears were important in the Hopewell community, because someone as exalted and as important as a shaman would not become one of the bear for no reason. And the reason why it is called the Ray figurine is because that is the name of the former owner of the piece. So I'm going to continue a little bit about the Ray figurine. It was found on the site of the Newark Earthworks in Ohio in 1881, and it was made from a piece of solid rock. So it was just carved out of this rock. There's a low relief face on the lap of the shaman, so it may symbolize the great floating head, which is a legendary figure in the mythology of the neighboring Iroquois. And it could also represent the shaman's ancestor. So the low relief sculpture on the lap of the shaman may also represent a bag used in a ceremony, such as a funeral. So pictured on the left of the text is the Newark Earthwork site, which is where the Ray figurine was found. And if the head on the lap of the shaman does represent the ancestor, the shaman can be either praying to or for the ancestor. So for example, the shaman could ask his ancestor for help, because maybe the ancestor is in the afterlife and is with the gods. But on the other hand, the shaman could ask for peace for his ancestor in the afterlife. He could be praying, for the gods to be merciful to him. So this figurine shows that the Hopewell people believed in a supernatural dimension and perhaps believed in an afterlife.
This is Caroline Clausen again, and I'm here to talk to y'all about the effigy of a human hand. This was a sculpture of a human hand made by the Hopewell, and it was hand cut from a sheet of mica. Mica is a natural element that we get from the earth, and it was very prosperous at this time. And it was excavated from the Hopewell Mountain Group in Ohio in around 1922 to 1925. A possibility for the use of this effigy was for divination ceremonies or personal ornaments. This is seen in what I was talking about earlier with the Hopewell artwork. Some of these would be placed in graves with necklaces, ornate cravings, etc. And this hand is often associated with Fibonacci's number. Fibonacci's number is also known as the Fibonacci sequence, and is an integer sequence where every number after the first two is the sum of the two preceding ones. This is often brought about with the golden ratio as well, and it comprises almost everything that we see. Also, this hand uses intricate use of geometry for exactness. This goes along with the golden ratio and Fibonacci's number as well. And then an effigy is essentially just often a life-size sculptural representation of a specific person or a prototypical figure. Lately, the term is more often used for makeshift dummies, used for symbolical punishment or political protests. And the figures burned in certain traditions around New Year's, Carnival, and Easter. In European cultures, effigies were in the past also used for punishment and formal justice when the perpetrator could not be apprehended, and in popular justice practices, the social shaming and exclusion. Additionally, an effigy is used for certain traditional forms of sculpture, namely tomb effigies, funeral effigies, and coin effigies. And the figure on the right of the slide is just showing this effigy where it is placed now. And yeah.
I am Brian Carretero, and I will be talking about effigy pipes. The effigy refers to the animal or human that was carved into the pipestone, in this picture being a wildcat. The pipe has been designed so that the animal faces the person who is smoking it. The believed purpose for this is that shamans would use these pipes to contact their spirit animals. So they felt that gazing into the animal's face while smoking it facilitated this process. The pipes represent a variety of animals significant to the Hopewell culture, including owls, wolves, deer, and beaver, as well as many others. The two main materials used for the effigy pipes are dark gray stone and mud, and skilled Hopewell craftsmen carve these pipes with flint knives, and some are embellished with pearls or copper, of course, making this more luxurious and of higher class. There were over 200 pipes buried in a collection of mounds known as the Mound City Group, and most of the pipes are found in two deposits, one being Mound City and the other being Tremper Mound. The remarkable animal effigy platform pipes of the Hopewell culture are amongst the most delicate and naturalistic of these sculpted effigies. And some archaeologists think that the pipes were mainly used in rituals by ceremonial leaders as well as shaman. They smoked potent native tobaccos to go on a trip and reach their spirit animals to facilitate the transfer of the deceased into the spirit world. During the burial ceremony, the ceremonial leaders might have invoked the effigy spirit for aid or protection in the spirit world. A lot of these effigy pipes are individualized, especially for the tribal leaders and people of higher ranking. They had their own effigy pipes, which were exclusive to them, and at the moment of their death, they were buried with said pipe. The normal citizens or normal people would sometimes be buried with effigy pipes, but they were not as individualized. They were more common animals, and not all of them were buried with one.
Hopewell pottery. Hopewell pottery was made from the local clay, so we know that it didn't, so that they didn't utilize trade for this. They were usually characterized by the use of positive and negative space, symmetry, curvy and geometrical shapes, and animal motifs like deer. In fact, humans were rarely depicted on their pots and ceramics. They were made for social and ceremonial purposes. They were mostly found on Hopewell mounds, so that we do know that they were used in burial rituals. Most pots now are recreations, at least for the Ohio Hopewell pottery, because most of them were destroyed. They were important in burial rituals, and they were utilitarian, which means that they had an everyday use. So they made them like bowls and jars and things like that. We continued. There were no kilns found at their site, so we do know that outside fires were used for pottery and ceramics. We just don't know at what temperatures. We just don't know at what temperatures that they were used to fire the pottery. They did use tools to make the designs. So they were decorated with stampers and rockers to make the designs, as we can see from the hook-billed bird pot and the plant and raptor pot. The little indentations were stampers and the lines were from rockers. So as you can see, that these two pots were from Illinois, because the Hopewell culture was not really one tribe, but a group across the Midwest, so that we can see also that they were found at the mound sites because they were used for burial purposes. And we could tell because these are the decorated ones, so they're probably not used for utilitarian purposes. And then we can see the animal motifs through the birds. And the fun fact about the plantain raptor pot is that it looks like there are two put on top of each other. So it was actually just two pots put on top of each other. And the top we can see from the plant and raptor pot is the plant, and the bottom is the raptor, aka the bird.
Matthew Dickman here, one last time here to talk about the Hopewell Mounds. So the Hopewell Mounds were these massive above ground formations built by the Hopewell tribe. And there were many of these found across their entire territory. So they hosted various types of ceremonies at these Hopewell Mounds, but most notably they hosted deaths and funerals there. So they were sort of very ceremonial towards funerals and deaths because they sort of acted like tombs. So there is the largest Hopewell Mound group was a 300-acre Hopewell Mound group, and it is a type of site for the Hopewell culture, and it is where they had their funerals and their burials for that particular point in time. The general shape of the entire Hopewell Mound group is a big parallelogram about 1,800 feet long and 2,800 feet wide from the north to the south. Archaeologists estimated the walls were originally 35 feet wide and was an enclosed area, just the Hopewell Mounds, of 111 acres. So they had the other 200 or so acres to host other events. The Hopewell Mounds were D-shaped, and they were D-shaped, and they were buried with very much of their artifacts and belongings. And due to this, they sort of acted like pyramids, but for the Hopewell Indians. They were the pyramids of Egypt, but for the plains of the United States. So there are 7 very large mounds that are found today. And of those 7, 3 of them are joined together, and they're located in Ohio, in the Midwest of the United States. So this is just a little description of sort of the architectural layout of a Hopewell Mound. So the Hopewell Mound will start at the bottom there. The log crypt was the base, and that was where the body was buried, also where a lot of the artifacts were put, such as the pottery as discussed earlier, or even such as the Ray figurine was also discussed earlier. Those were all put there with the belongings buried with the sarcophagus and the mummified sarcophagus on the inside. On top of that log crypt, there was a primary mound, which is regular dirt and earth found from around the local area. And that was meant to kind of serve like a base coat to cover up the log crypt and make it so that it was harder to rob. Also, going on to this, to make it more difficult to rob, is also the secondary mounds. This was a thicker, more loose soil put on top of the Hopewell mounds, and that served as more just a second protection, once for the body and once just to make sure that they weren't going to be robbed as much as some other tombs from the past. They tried to learn from errors in the past. So this is just a little bit about the Hopewell mounds today. A lot of them were leveled and a lot of them were reconstructed because due to World War I, the military put a base there. So they leveled all the mounds for the base, or most of them. That was during World War I. So now many of them have been reconstructed. There's still a few originals, but most of them have been reconstructed. And the government has actually put a national park to honor the ancient civilization. So there's actually a Hopewell Mounds National Park, and that was to honor the Hopewell Indians and their ancient leaders. And if you're interested, there are available tours of the national park, and you could go to the nationalparkservice.org to see that. I have it cited at the end of the presentation. And you can see the Hopewell Mounds and just see how large these things are in real life and how big this group of 300 acres really is. Okay, so these are our sources for the project. This concludes our speaking about the Hopewell tribe and culture. We hope you enjoyed it. We thank you for listening. This is Matthew Dickman and Group Americas 3 signing off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.